It is the Doomsday Podcast. Ed Werder, Matt Mosley, and we have been celebrating Thanksgiving with our respective families today. And I have just talked to Jerry Jones. And Ed, I'm here to tell you that he can't quite bring himself to talk playoffs quite yet, but he's getting there. You know, he's kind of getting closer. And I brought it up with him just to kind of see if I could nudge him in that direction. But he did when I asked him about like how something kind of like what you would ask him usually, like to finally win at home. How did it feel? I mean, did that feel big because it's been so long or whatever I said? And I said, since you've had so many issues. And he was like, I guess, I mean, I'm not sure what issues you're speaking of. And I said, well, all those losses you had at home. He's like, oh yeah, that. Anyway.
How we were scoring like 15 points a game and the opponents were scoring like 30 points a game and we lost 5 straight times. Those issues?
Yeah. So he was wondering what issues, but Ed, this team today has, and I want to wish all our people a happy Thanksgiving. Ed, I've already wished you a happy Thanksgiving, but I'll do it publicly now. And I know Jill probably had an unbelievable spread. We probably should start there, Ed. What was kind of the main course today? Was it a traditional turkey and ham, or did you go off brand at all?
No, we had a 19-pound turkey. Jill's been working on this meal for about 5 days, getting her stock ready and everything. So we had delicious gravy, mashed potatoes, stuffing. She made a couple of pies, a chocolate pie, a pumpkin pie. So we were well fed here at the Werder residence while we observed this incredible performance by the Cowboys, and especially by the defense. I mean, to get to 5-7, I mean, what a huge accomplishment.
You're pretty much, this may be the last time first time I haven't seen you at a home game in about 20 years. And so the Cowboys have asked me to ask you, would you, at least until they lose again, would you stay away?
I'd be glad to if that's what it takes.
So Cowboys improve,
and they'll honor me with the Super Bowl ring at the end of it. They'll honor me with the Super Bowl ring at the end of it. Should they go that far?
I think they would do that for sure. Ed, and this is another very important thing, and then we'll of course get to the game and what happened today and what it means moving forward. But Lainey Wilson's performance, I watched it in person, but you probably heard it a little bit better at home, I would think, or on your TV. Jelly Roll was a surprise entrance in today's performance. And one of my little jokes about Jelly Roll did resonate with our Twitter audience when I said that I thought he could help the Cowboys with a couple of plays at the 3 technique. He's a big man, and he loves a good face tattoo. Don't we all, really? What did you think about that pairing? As a guy who's actually been on XM and has been on No Shoes Radio, and so you know about that style of country. Were you impressed with that performance?
Absolutely. I mean, she's one of the biggest new stars in country music, and he was, kind of a guy who overcame a lot to create a identity and success in country music over time. How can you possibly compare them to last year and Dolly Parton? Like Dolly Parton in a Cowboys cheerleader outfit at her age, I'm not sure anything can quite beat that. But I thought Lainey and Jelly Roll acquitted themselves quite nicely.
Better or worse than the Cowboys defense? We'll answer that in a second. It is a Thanksgiving edition. I mean, this is a big one, and the Cowboys win this game, although kind of had some anxious moments late, as only the Cowboys could do. 27-20 over those dastardly New York Football Giants. Mike Hamilton of Rogue Media Network, please play the music. Okay. And it is Doomsday Podcast, and Ed and I always pleased to be with you. Cowboys win this one, and Ed, we'll get to Rico because that was a big story on the offensive side. The feature back. This was a rare game, and even Ed, it was kind of funny, and we'll talk about it. But we talk about it now. Actually, I thought it was funny that late in the game, this guy literally has gone over the 100-yard mark. He had that big run for 18 yards, and he had the first 20-yard run of the season. He scored his first touchdown, and then late in the game, Mike, or I say late in the game, about halfway through, when they desperately need to run it, Mike went back to his roots and just started throwing it around everywhere and wouldn't hand the ball to Rico, which was just so odd. But tremendous performance by Rico Dowdle.
Let me tell you a little secret about Mike McCarthy that I've learned from many years of covering him in Green Bay before he came to Dallas and then each of his seasons here. Mike likes to talk about how much he intends to run the football. He doesn't really like to run the football, and he really doesn't run the football very often. Rico Dowdle, over 100 yards for the first time in his career, breaking that eyesore of a Cowboys streak of 25 consecutive games without a 100-yard rusher, a franchise record, and the second longest streak in the NFL. Denver's at 29 straight games without a 100-yard rusher. And they did it, without Zach Martin in the offensive line. They did it some of the time without Tyler Guyton at left tackle because he left the game with a high ankle sprain. So they've had some injuries in the offensive line. But we have to keep in mind, with everything we say here, without greatly diminishing the accomplishment of the Cowboys finally winning a home game for the first time in 334 days, that this was the Giants. And the Cowboys have not only owned the Giants for the past decade, but the Giants are arguably the worst team in football. They gave up a league-high 5.3 yards per rush against them on defense between the tackles coming into this game. So it's not entirely surprising that Rico Dowdle would have the first 100-yard rushing game since Tony Pollard week 3 against Arizona last year. And in general, it's just a bad football team. That's the reason the 6th pick in the draft and their former starting quarterback 2 weeks ago, Daniel Jones, is now a Minnesota Viking. It's why Joe Sheen, their general manager, spent this week scouting in Boulder, Colorado, looking at Shedeur Sanders and maybe Deion Sanders too, for all we know. So there's big changes coming for the Giants. It's been a huge failure of a season. They are right now in possession of the number 1 pick in the draft. And as you know, and I think most of our viewers know, that goes to the worst team in football. And they're contending with the Raiders for that honor in April to make the first pick in the draft. So that's the team the Cowboys beat today. I'm not trying to diminish it. I'm just saying let's be a little cautious when we're celebrating the fact that they finally won back-to-back games and they're no longer winless at home. Only the Giants now are winless at home.
Yeah, and the Giants, well said. That's a rough unit that came in here, although Drew Lock, if they would just run him more, he's extremely hard to stop and was able to have a couple of big running plays, and they at least hung around. They were never totally in it, but they made a little bit of noise late in the game to make it interesting. And staying on offense, Ed, it was Cooper Rush, what our friend Stretch would call a workmanlike effort. I don't think he was brilliant, but he was fine. He was fine, and he took care of the ball, except for that scary moment when it looked like he'd fumbled into the end zone. But fortunately for the Cowboys, his knee was ruled to be down, and that would have been a big momentum-changing play in the game. But at a huge moment, he was able to what's surprising to me about him, Ed, we always talk about Dak needs to run more, Dak needs to do that, Dak's good on the run, all that stuff. Cooper is surprisingly, I don't think you and I would think of him as being overly athletic. Yet, man, some of his best throws come on the move. Yeah. And he had one that I can recall. He kind of hummed one across the middle. That was a big pass today. And then, of course, on the he caught Brandon Cooks coming across the end zone, and that was a big third down play because they really needed a touchdown there. So, Ed, this team's been really bad in the red zone at times this season, And I think and of course, early in this game, they had to settle for field goals, right? They had to get it. They were at 7-6. And so it had the feel of some of these other past home games. But I thought Cooper Rush, again, not great, but I thought he played fine.
Well, yeah, I think he's now 7-3 as a starter, but he's undefeated when he doesn't turn the ball over. He's 6-0 as a starting quarterback when he turns the ball over. He's 0-3 when he does turn the ball over. And so I think he fumbles a lot. It seems like he's had fumbles in almost every game he's played, and the one on the goal line was a really close play that could have been their 7th red zone turnover of the year, and would have been a real disaster. And in fact, it could have cost him the game, as it turned out. But yeah, he's been able to manage the offense fairly effectively. He doesn't throw a lot of balls that he puts in jeopardy, but he does fumble quite often. CeeDee Lamb had a horrible game today, season high 3 drops, and didn't even finish because it looked like he hurt his shoulder when he went to the ground on one play in the fourth quarter, and they just kind of held him out because they felt like they could manage the lead without him, and they did. But he had 2 catches in the game. His poorest performance since 2022. So that's got to change if they're really going to make a run to try and get to 10 wins and see where that leaves them at the end of the year. Brandon Cooks played for the first time since week 4 against the Giants when he sought treatment for that knee injury, had the arthroscopic procedure, developed an infection, finally comes back. He made an impact not only with the touchdown catch, but kind of clinched that made that diving catch for the first down in the fourth quarter that sort of wrapped up the game for the Cowboys. So it was good to have him back too, but they've got to get CeeDee Lamb straightened out, whatever's wrong with him. He can't be dropping the ball like he has been, and he needs to be far more productive if the Cowboys are genuinely going to beat some of these teams that remain on their schedule ahead of them. And the next 3 teams are teams that have losing records, so they should have every opportunity to win those games. And only one of those games is on the road. That's against Carolina.
Yeah, not considered one of the all-time great teams for sure. And then Ed, just staying with that offensive line for a second, I got to say, and every once in a while I'll zero in on a few people. And with Guyton getting knocked out of that game, I think some fans, given his penalty history this year, maybe obviously they didn't want him to get hurt, but they weren't really sad to see him leave the game. Chuma,
so you don't have Awesome Richards either, who was the backup. He's got a high ankle sprain, so he's out. I think didn't go on IR just the other day, in fact. So
correct. Yeah, he's on IR. And I thought Chuma Edoga, I just happened to zero in on one of those plays. They probably showed it on TV. They threw a little screen pass out, and I can't remember if it was Turpin or Dowdle. They ended up getting a big play out of it. But, man, Chuma was downfield, making a big block, just blew somebody up in the open field. And I got to say, and hopefully Guyton will end up as a nice player for the Cowboys. They need that to happen. But certainly was not a big drop-off with Chuma going out there. And the O-line, I think we have to give them some credit. Again, as you said, Giants, not good. They're horrible against the run. But this has been a Cowboys team that's really not good with the run against any kind of defense. Right. So the fact that they stayed with it and Rico had as many carries. I mean, again, to your point, which is a good point, Mike, after the game, I'm listening to him, and he's like, yeah, I've always thought that if we could get Rico north of 20 carries, like he could have a great day. It's like, dude, you're the play caller. Like you're the one over there with the laminated sheet. Like nobody's trying to keep him under 20 carries except you. So exactly. Again, he was talking big, and that's what Mike does from time to time. Ed, the defense again was the story. Certainly they allowed some things, but that was a big pick 6, and Overshown continues to be a playmaker. I mean, Micah Parsons had 1.5 sacks and had a really good day, but Overshown, that was a really exciting and a great play for the Cowboys because it kind of turned the game in that moment into to block a pass and then catch the pass. Ed, that is a extremely athletic play, and I think DeMarvion Overshown, there haven't been a ton of silver linings this year, But boy, he's been a real breakthrough player for this team. And if they can just keep him healthy, because he seems to be constantly leaving games. In this game, he came back and then he made a huge play.
Yeah, the defense in general was outstanding. Is their best game since, I think, Cleveland week 1. They matched their season high. In fact, from week 1 with 6 sacks. They had 2 takeaways. First defensive touchdown of the season, the one you're describing by DeMarvion Overshown. And again, the Giants are playing their 3rd different quarterback in 3 games. Drew Lock had 2 walkthrough practices, missing both his starting offensive tackles and playing on the road in a short week. But, to me, you can look at it and just nothing has improved the performance of the Cowboys and their odds of winning more than Micah Parsons returning and being healthy after that high ankle sprain against the Giants in week 4. I mean, Mike Zimmer now has a chance, I think, really to be creative with his calls, create some favorable matchups. In fact, since Parsons has returned, the Cowboys have 16 sacks in the 4 games. And I think they now have 2 really unique playmakers going forward in Micah Parsons and Overshown. Both have tremendous speed. And, I mean, what Overshown did on that touchdown, taking on the running back, Devin Singletary's block, deflecting the pass, tracking it, intercepting it, carrying it to the end zone, later recovered a Drew Lock fumble, which also set up a touchdown. So the Cowboys' 2 touchdowns were really the result of the defense. They earned 1 on their own, but they had huge help from the defense. And even on the touchdown drive that they did manage to put together themselves, that contained a huge play by Kevontae Turpin, who they occasionally and should more often borrow from the special teams. So he had another big play in the offense. But, yeah, I mean, the defense is playing outstanding. Unfortunately, lost 2 young corners. They hopefully now have 10 days, 11 days to get ready before they play Monday night at home against the Bengals, which will really test their defense because they're having a terrible year. But Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are sensational. In fact, they lead their respective positions despite the fact the Bengals have a losing record, which is quite unusual. But if they get protected, they'll chat. And hopefully the Cowboys will have Trayvon Diggs back for that game and finally have their top 3 corners for the first time.
The cart had to come out there. Wanye Thomas, number 30 for the Cowboys. That was a really tough injury, and you hated to see, him. And then, of course, Darius Butler, as you were mentioning, the 2 young players from the secondary who's been so good for the Cowboys and continues to make plays. And that one didn't look great either, as he was really seemed to favor his knee, if I'm recalling that correctly.
Non-contact right knee, it looked like, yeah.
Yeah. So 2 players that are out. They do have Deron Bland back on defense now. Jordan Lewis is out there, and as you said, Diggs may be on the way back. So help is on the way as the Cowboys. Boy, Ed, Thanksgiving. I mean, 5-7. It's never felt so good.
Who would have thought we'd be talking about 5-7 and people would be feeling good about it?
Yeah,
that's how bad the first half of the season was for this franchise.
And let's not forget that we had a Jerry moment this week where I guess the question was phrased: is it crazy to think that Mike McCarthy could get a contract extension? And boy, now he's rolling, Ed. And Jerry said, no, it's not crazy to think at all. And I think highly of Mike McCarthy. That really does still seem like a long shot. I do like that Mike has a little theme that he's going with in his news conferences. We're still, what is his little phrase? We're still in the valley of
adversity.
That's it. He said it again tonight. I still consider us in the valley of adversity. I think he needs to keep saying that. Just like no matter what the record is, even if they somehow get this thing to 9-7, I still think we're in the valley of adversity. I like that. I like that phrase.
He's big on, he's big on logos and T-shirts and sayings, and I'm surprised we haven't seen that one yet.
The valley of adversity. That's kind of what our podcast is.
Maybe he's waiting until he can put on there, I survived the valley of adversity.
Yes. And if anybody's wondering, well, would 10-7 ensure that Mike McCarthy would be back? The answer is maybe.
Look, I mean, Here's what we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't know if Jerry's been feeling people out about this job. Should it come open? Should he decide to make a change? And getting a sense for who's interested and at what level and so forth and so on. And maybe that would have prompted him to say what he did the other day. Although in answering that question under the circumstances, he really can't say definitively, no, Mike's not coming back next year. I mean, he would be tanking the season and undoing the progress, that he just witnessed. So while it was a little surprising to hear him say that, in reality, he really can't say anything else until he decides otherwise after the season. But I put it like Jerry's been struck with playoff fever. One win over Washington, and all of a sudden he envisions a deep playoff run and Mike McCarthy as his lifetime partner as a head coach. But, and I think, in some ways I look at it and go, well, Jerry's 82, maybe doesn't want to do a whole organizational reset. And, we've heard Troy Aikman today. We heard Tom Brady praising Mike McCarthy on a national telecast as a great coach. Called him a great coach. Same thing Aikman said about him and went into some detail about it. And you would think that really wouldn't matter with Jerry because, I mean, Jerry has worked with a guy every day for 5 years. Like Jerry should know more about him than these guys do, right? So his opinion, firsthand knowledge of working with Mike should carry way more weight than anything Troy Aikman says on ESPN or Tom Brady says on Fox. And yet he mentioned that, and in part of his explanation the other day was, I heard Troy Aikman say on Monday Night Football, Mike's a great coach, But ultimately, if you don't win a contract extension, you go 12-5 3 years in a row because you're 1-3 in the playoffs, which is the worst record of playoffs for any team in the last 5 years, then how can you do anything less? How can you have a losing season or not make the playoffs and be rewarded with a contract extension? I mean, this fan base is somewhat alienated and has been ever since the Green Bay loss, and they're going to want something, to believe again. And they're not going to get what they really want, which is Jerry to resign as a general manager and hire somebody else. And so the next best thing he can give them is Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, I think that's right. And so I would still put the percentage that I would say it was at 98% chance that he was gone, and it's down to a 90% chance. Okay, with this run that they're on right now. All right, I do want to say that thanks to Marable Homes, tremendous in the community. Ed, big tennis family. In fact, I just was driving by the Lake Highlands tennis courts, and they had the huge Marable Homes banner because they are the main sponsor for Lake Highlands tennis. And then they ventured into Preston Hollow, Highland Park, other parts of Dallas. They're custom luxury custom homes. They're gorgeous. You've got to see them in person. It's MARABLE homes.com. MarableHomes.com. These are tennis people, and these are also people that build gorgeous homes, and we love having them involved with. In fact, Ed, I want to send you some pictures this week as they put up the lights on some of these homes, because I do think Christmas lights, I'm told, helps people sell homes from time to time. And Ed, I know you're probably like the Griswold family out there in Flower Mound, but I want to send you kind of Lake Highlands. In fact, I'm going to put some lights up this week, which means I'm going to pay some of my daughter's high school buddies to climb on the house and do it. But
are they used to climbing on the roof to get into her window?
To do what? No, let's not. No access to that at all. Let's not even mention that. It is now time for the former Cowboys coach and former Cowboys scout, Glenn Stretch Smith. You have to think he's going to be in a pretty positive mood. Here he is. It is time for Stretch Plays. You know him as Glenn Stretch Smith, former Cowboys scout and coach. And Stretch, let's start on the defense. maybe arguably the biggest play of the game was DeMarvion Overshone tipping that pass to himself and then returning that for a touchdown. And with him and the combination of Micah returning, boy, they've had a galvanizing impact on this defense. But if you'll just start with like Overshone in particular, in that play, I mean, this guy is he's one of the standouts this season because even in a real down season, he's become a playmaker for this team. And that is something you can hopefully hang your hat on moving forward.
Yeah, when you think about what happened last year and getting injured, it's taken him a little while. You saw flashes of it early in the year. He would flash here, he would flash there, but all of a sudden now he's a main part of this defense. You see how he comes up and the back steps up to block him. He butts the back right in the mouth, then chases the quarterback, and then he felt, that back kind of let me go too soon there. I'm going to read and recognize this. When you start speeding that up to the level of read and recognition that he went through, which was bang, butt him up, now chase the quarterback, now settle, now bat the ball, go make the play. I mean, that's big time. And when you have the kind of speed that he does and you play with that mental mindset of knowing and reading and recognizing and putting it all together, to me, he's taken his game to another level. I thought without question, when you see how he reacted, what he read, and then how he went about it in such a quick fashion, those are all good things. And I think that's the point I want to make going into this is when you get to play young players at a really early time in their career, they're only going to get better. Hoffman getting better as a guard. I mean, all of those young guys are able to access playing the game at a really high level and at the speed of the game. And I think that's what you saw with what happened with Overshone in that play. I think it's what you've seen happen with multiple guys. I mean, you see Golston flying around. You see Lawson making big-time plays. Mozzie Smith has played as good the last 2 weeks as I've ever seen him play. And so the Dallas defense is starting to do some things that I think you were expecting at the beginning of the year. And then when they had the attrition just kill the one position at defensive end, now they're starting to get those guys back. Now they're starting to understand Zimmer's system. And, I mean, you can say what you want about what kind of football team the Giants were. They came in here and played about as good as they could play, knowing, guess what? We're on national TV. We're in the primetime game, and it'll be a lot of people in a tryptophan coma, but they're going to be watching this game. And I think you saw a team going and play, like I said, about as good as they could play, and Dallas answered with everything they could answer with defensively. And now they've done it, in my mind, 2 weeks in a row for you could argue a complete game against Washington at the end of the game. But to me, they're playing defense really, really good.
All right. And Odighizuwa, Golston, you mentioned Mozzie as well, and they're getting some standout performances kind of across the board. Even I'd say Kendricks ended up with a really big game. I think he had 10 tackles, and he was flying around the field. So you got a pretty complete performance on the defensive end. Now let's flip it over there on the offense. And, Cooper Rush doesn't do anything that flashy. I wanted to see what you thought of his approach. I thought that was a big throw, obviously, he made on the touchdown. And he what's interesting to me, and of course, CD had a couple of drops. That wasn't helpful to him. But Cooper is able to throw fairly accurately at some points, even moving on the move a little bit. What do you think of his overall performance in this game?
Yeah, he likes getting the football out of his hand. He likes making those quick throws. He likes throwing that quick hitch. He likes throwing the little option stick route to the tight end. He likes to throw the swing out. He's accurate with the football in that range, and you can tell he's very comfortable with that. You can also tell that because of the number of games and the number of snaps that he's been in, he's starting to become more comfortable what he's seeing. With what he's seeing the defense do. You hear him making the checks at the line of scrimmage. You hear him checking to a run, to a pass to a run, and they were able to, obviously we know what they did from a running game standpoint, but I just think that overall Cooper Rush is managing the football game. I hate that he fumbled that ball down there, and they you can't do that in critical situations, but all of that you have to learn from, and all of that you have to grow from. Do I wish he was a better deep ball thrower? I do. Do I wish he'd let the deep ball go more where the receiver doesn't have to kind of hang back to make the play? I do. But I think those things will come as he gets a little more playing time. And you got, putting Brandon Cooks and taking him off of IR, that took some of the pressure off of CD. So it's going to take him a little time to feel that comfort level and the game speed with Brandon Cooks, but overall, I mean, he played well enough to win you another football game, and now all of a sudden, you match the run with what he can do, which, like you said, I mean, he likes to be able to boot a little bit to the right. Now that's going to become a pattern, and defenses are going to see that he likes that. He likes to be able to boot out of that to the right and into his hand, which most players do. But I think overall he made the throws when he had to make them, and threw the touchdown on that shallow cross to Cooks, and then he converted on the big third down right there to put the football game away. So overall, he can't turn the football over. He cannot turn the football over. But if you can keep him from doing that, and he's going to learn. He needs to learn how to get down a little sooner, and you keep doing that and getting the effort you'll get out of your defense. I mean, good things can happen, and that's what you've seen the last 2 weeks.
You're right. He was fortunate that his knee was ruled down. That would have been that would have been a really bad turnover down there in the end zone. And he does have a fumbling issue that he needs to take care of. Needs to protect the ball a little bit more. You mentioned Dowdle. He ends up with over 120 yards. Stretch, it's been forever since they've had a 100-yard rusher. In fact, it was like Pollard week 3 of last season, if you can believe it. I mean, we're talking about a lot of games since that's happened. How much of that did you see? You think the O-line did a nice job? And then did you just see Dowdle kind of get in a rhythm as a runner, because they finally had an explosive play in the running game? I mean, you don't see that very often. They had a run of over 20 yards, and he had several other, pretty big plays in this game.
Yeah, I mean, running the football is an attitude, and it's also being able to give it to that guy where he can keep hitting it in there. What I liked is there were so many, 2-yard runs he turned into 5-yard runs. 6-yard runs he turned into 8-yard runs. He's carrying his pads right. He's running with the right pad level. I think the offensive line did a great job. I think Hoffman stepping in for Martin was better. I think you're seeing Soonmaker, who's stepped in for Ferguson. He's blocking a little better. You're seeing you saw Adoga come in and play some at left tackle. I think overall they're starting to run the football, number one, because they have to. They have no choice. If you're going to win right now, you can't throw the ball 55 times like he did against like he did against Houston. I mean, that's an appetite for getting beat, and it's also an appetite for going 3 and out. I think the key thing that you've seen this Cowboy offense do the last 2 weeks is eliminate going 3 and out. And when you're running the football, you very rarely do you see yourself go 3 and out, because if you're successful running the ball, then you got a little play action, and all you got to do is dink and dunk for 1 first down. So I think McCarthy is committed. It looks like is trying to commit himself to calling more runs, and the run design it fits Dowdle. I like that they got the ball to Turpin a couple times on the perimeter instead of CD like they've been having to do. I like that they put Zeke in there at fullback and let him hit it up in there on that fullback dive. They tried to do the same to Lipke, but I think Lipke had his eyes closed. He ran right into the ass of the center. But overall, they're committed to running the football, and running the football is a commitment, and it's something that you've got to work on. And I believe you can tell this team has worked on just doing that, running the football. And they ran the football well last week with Bass and Hoffman in there, and they ran the football good this week with Soonmaker, who's only going to get better. And, maybe they can get Span forward where he feels more comfortable, and then they're not having to do it out of so much two-back. They can do it out of 12 personnel. So I think all of those things are kind of coming together for the Cowboys right now. And then you bring Cooks off of IR. That loosens the secondary up a little bit and gives you a chance to be able to not allow them to play so much, joker the safeties in there so close, and you're able to hit those bigger runs.
All right, big test coming up. Even though the Bengals don't have a good record, that'll be an interesting test on Monday night. Cowboys get 10 days to prepare for that. And then, of course, Carolina. And there is a path here, Stretch, to possibly get it to 500 and then take it from there wherever you want to go. Stretch, happy Thanksgiving to you, Colby, your mom, everybody involved out there, and appreciate you being a part of the Doomsday Podcast.
Hey man, it's good to be on. I'm going to finish by saying this. I mean, as critical as at times I've been of Mike McCarthy, guess what? His team has bought in, and they've won 2 games in a row, and they're playing hard. And you got to give those guys credit, in the entire staff, for keeping these guys hooked. And it's a lot better Thanksgiving, and it's a lot easier to do these podcasts when the Cowboys are winning, for sure. Happy Thanksgiving to you, and thanks for having me.
All right, there he goes, Glenn Stretch Smith on the Doomsday Podcast. There he is, Glenn Stretch Smith. Good to have him, and good to have him as part of our Rogue Media Network family. Ed, final thoughts on tonight's Cowboys 27-20 victory over the Giants. Again, it did, even though, as you said, not a great team that they beat, at least they beat a team at home, because we've gone on to see that the Saints weren't exactly what we thought they were. I think you made a fair point in that I don't think it's really fair to view the Bengals as a true 4-7, like the Cowboys, like we viewed the Cowboys at 4-7, or when they were at 3-7. This is a different kind of team. They've been involved in a lot of close games, and they've put up big numbers on offense, and they just cannot get over the hump, and they keep losing these close games. So that's a scary team, perhaps even more than Tampa. Although Tampa, Ed, is a good example of a team that was sitting there at, I think, 5-7 last season and did find their way into the playoffs.
Yeah, well, we've seen since the NFL went to the 17-game schedule, there have been 2 teams that started 4-7 like the Cowboys did and made the playoffs. But in both cases, those teams were members of a really weak division, and they won the division. Getting in as a wild card with so many teams in front of you is going to be really challenging for the Cowboys. And I mean, we didn't expect that they were going to win the division last year at this point either, because the Eagles had such a big lead and they collapsed down the stretch, and the Cowboys overtook them for what little value there was ultimately in that accomplishment. But I don't think the Eagles are 5 games in front of them. Washington's in front of them. The only teams behind them are in the NFC are Carolina and the Giants. And so that's a lot of teams to have to pass to make the playoffs. So I think it's going to be really difficult for them to do that. But, I'm out there, during the week, every week, several times a week. And, I get a sense for how much work they put into it and how seriously they take this. And how much they want to win. And so I think it's good that they get rewarded, in this way periodically. And yeah, the Giants aren't a great team. And quite honestly, the Cowboys didn't even blow them out. They used to blow teams out at home when they were totally superior to them. And they didn't do that today. It was a 3-point game at the half. And the Giants, it made it a 1-possession game in the fourth quarter again. So they didn't dominate their bad opponent, but they won, and they're giving themselves whatever chance they can. They're going to have to win. You have to keep in mind that they're going to be playing a backup quarterback the whole rest of the year. If Dak was coming back, maybe I'd feel a little differently about their prospects for making it as a wild card team. But I just think they're just not explosive enough on offense, and that's the danger in playing a team like Cincinnati that's going to score on you. I think is can the Cowboys answer offensively? And we haven't seen any real evidence of that even today, because they were carried by the defense yet again. I mean, this looked more like a game from last year where the defense set up the offense on a consistent basis.
That's nice of you to say about Dak, by the way. Some might argue that Dak could hurt their chances if he was able to return. What did Jerry say? We weren't that good with Dak.
We won 3 ball games with Dak. Now they've won 2 games without Dak.
Oh, man. Yes, Jerry and I did have an interesting back and forth tonight, talking about some of the losses they've had. But it was a very happy Jerry Jones. Wished everybody a happy Thanksgiving. It was about a 5-minute session.
Ed,
you and I've been a part of some like 20-minute or 25-minute type sessions, and in fact, it allowed he may have been asked to go short to allow some people to actually attend Mike McCarthy's news conference,
which takes place coincidentally at the same time just down the hall.
Yeah. And Mike was very nice afterwards, like how much he was thankful for everybody in the room, all the media, and all that kind of thing. So he was very nice, and who knows? Maybe he will rally this team, and then boy, you talk about mixed emotions. If they somehow rallied and got into the playoffs, and heaven forbid won a first-round playoff game, people would feel so conflicted. I think the majority of Cowboys fans would love the ride and would love. And also, Ed, and I was just joking a minute ago about the Dak thing, but you do know if they get on some kind of huge run here and Cooper helps fuel it, there'll be a lot of people saying you need to ride this wave.
People have been saying that for the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I know. And one man makes $60 million a year, and one man doesn't. One man probably makes what?
One man makes less. The guy playing makes less than the quarterback not playing at the moment.
Yes.
Trey Lance makes more money than Cooper Rush.
Yeah. And I mean, we didn't even get your wish for a Trey Lance package this evening.
All I wanted for Thanksgiving was an expansive Trey Lance package.
When they put him on the goal line against Washington, they went the wrong direction. They had to get him back out of there. But nice young man, and he was nice enough to do a special exclusive on the Doomsday podcast. All right, for Rogue Media Network, we want to wish all our friends at Rogue, especially Mike Hamilton, who's with us each and every week, and holidays, late nights, all of that. Mike's always right there with us, fighting a good fight. And Ed, happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. And we will. I'll look forward to being in person with you. Hopefully that Monday night. That'll be. Boy, we love a good Monday night. And of course, they would have opted out of this thing except for the Simpsons alternate cast had already been drawn up featuring the Cowboys and Bengals. So they're going to have.
You don't screw with Bart Simpson, buddy.
Yeah, but you have to admit this Cowboys little run helps. That helps Monday Night Football, right? Because they can kind of play that up and all that. Yeah. Ed, thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving.
See you in person for Monday Night Football.
Sounds good. For Ed Werder and Rogue Media Network, I'm Matt Mosley. Good night from AT&T Stadium. It's been Doomsday.
We are Rogue Media Sports. Here goes.